The ship was called the Origin. It was Earth's first deep space explorer, built by hands from every country on the planet. When it launched, the whole world watched. Children waved flags. Old men cried. For the first time in human history, people from Earth were going far beyond their home star, past the edge of the Sol system, into the open dark where no human had ever traveled before. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge that day. She was 38 years old, calm, and sure of herself. She had trained for this mission for 12 years. Beside her stood her first officer, Marcus Reyes, and her chief engineer, a quiet man named Tobias Lin who spoke more to machines than to people. The crew numbered 212. They were scientists, soldiers, doctors, and dreamers. Some had left families behind. Some had no families at all. All of them believed they were doing something that mattered. At that time, humanity was new to the wider galaxy. Only 20 years earlier, Earth had made first contact with an alien race called the Velkari, gentle traders who flew slow ships and spoke in soft musical tones. Through the Velkari, humans learned that the galaxy was full of life, full of empires, full of danger. Some of these empires were peaceful, many were not. The strongest and most feared of them was the Core Empire, a warlike civilization that had conquered dozens of star systems and answered to no one. The Core did not think much of humans. To them, Earth was a small, backward world, full of soft, short-lived creatures who had only just learned to leave their own solar system. The Core Empire had rules about which species were allowed to expand freely and which were not. Humans, in their eyes, had not earned the right to explore far. But humanity did not ask permission. The Origin was built anyway, and it left Earth anyway, heading toward a region of space that human telescopes had marked years earlier. A strange, swirling cloud of energy and dust that scientists called the Veil. No probe sent toward the Veil had ever returned a clear signal. Some said it was full of rare minerals. Some said it hid an ancient ruin. Nobody knew for certain, because nothing that entered the Veil ever came back out. The Origin was going to be the first ship to try. For the first 4 months, everything went well. The crew sent messages home every week. They described the stars they passed, the strange colors of far-off nebulae, the silence of open space that felt, Captain Voss wrote once, like standing in a cathedral built by no one. Earth followed the mission closely. News channels gave daily updates. A generation of children grew up watching the Origin's slow crawl across the black. Then, on the 131st day of the mission, the Origin entered core-controlled space by accident. Their charts were incomplete. Humanity did not yet have accurate maps of that region, because no alien empire had shared them. A core border patrol, 3 warships strong, intercepted the Origin near the edge of the Veil and ordered it to stop. Captain Voss tried to explain. She said they were a peaceful science vessel, unarmed except for basic defense systems, and that they meant no threat to core territory. She offered to turn back immediately. The Corps commander, a cold and proud officer named Threl Koss, did not accept this. In his mind, humans were trespassing, and trespassers had to be punished, both to protect core borders and to teach the young species a lesson about its place in the galaxy. The core ships opened fire. What happened next was recorded by the Origin's last transmission, a broken, static-filled signal that reached Earth 11 days later, delayed by distance. The recording showed weapons fire lighting up the black. It showed the Origin trying to flee, damaged, one engine burning. It showed Captain Voss's voice, steady even as alarms screamed behind her, giving the order to steer the ship directly into the Veil itself, their only chance of escape, since core ships would not dare follow into a region that had swallowed every vessel that entered it. Then the signal cut off. There was nothing after that. No wreckage was ever found. No further transmission ever came. The Origin and its 212 crew members were gone, swallowed by the same strange cloud that had eaten every probe sent before it. Earth mourned. The loss of the Origin was the greatest tragedy humanity had faced since leaving its home planet. Memorials were built in every major city. The names of the 212 crew members were carved into a black stone wall outside the United Nations Space Council building, a wall that people still visited decades later, leaving flowers, photographs, and letters for people they had never met. The Core Empire, when confronted, admitted to the attack but showed no remorse. Threl Koss was quietly promoted rather than punished. Officially, core diplomats said the humans had violated core space and paid the price for their carelessness. Privately, many other species in the galaxy saw it differently. They saw a young, hopeful civilization crushed simply for existing in the wrong place, by an empire that believed strength alone gave it the right to judge who deserved to live and who did not. But there was little Earth could do. Humanity had no fleet capable of challenging the core empire. It had barely stepped beyond its own solar system. So Earth did what wounded nations often do. It grieved, it grew angry, and slowly, over years, it grew stronger. The loss of the origin changed Earth's path. Where before humanity had been eager and a little careless in its expansion, now it became careful, quiet, and determined. Earth poured resources into shipbuilding, into training, into forming alliances with smaller species who had also suffered under core rule. Human engineers, driven partly by grief and partly by pride, built ships faster and tougher than anyone expected from such a young species. Human soldiers trained harder than most other races thought was reasonable. Slowly, without ever becoming as large as the core empire, humanity earned a reputation. Other species began to say that humans were stubborn, difficult to kill, and impossible to intimidate. It was not the reputation Earth had wanted at first, but it was the reputation Earth had earned. 50 years passed. Captain Elena Voss's name became a symbol. Schools were named after her. A statue of her stood in the courtyard of the Earth Fleet Academy, her hand raised as if giving an order, her face carved in calm confidence. Marcus Reyes, her first officer, had a scholarship fund in his name for young cadets who could not afford academy fees. Tobias Lin, the quiet engineer, was remembered mostly by other engineers, who still used a small trick he had once written into a training manual, without knowing where it came from. The children who had once watched the Origin launch on their television screens were now old men and women. Some had grandchildren serving in Earth's fleet. Humanity was no longer the small, uncertain species it had been 50 years ago. It had colonies now, spread across a dozen star systems. It had its own fleet, smaller than the core empires but respected. It had allies among species who remembered how the core had once treated a defenseless newcomer, and who admired how that same newcomer had refused to disappear quietly. And yet, despite everything, no one had ever stopped wondering what happened to the Origin. It was a wound that never fully closed. Every year, on the anniversary of the last transmission, ceremonies were still held. The veil itself, that strange cloud of dust and energy, remained one of the great mysteries of known space. Scientists still argued about what it was. Some believed it was a natural phenomenon, a pocket of unstable space that tore ships apart at the atomic level. Others believed it was something built, an ancient structure so old that its true purpose had been lost, even to the oldest species in the galaxy. No probe had ever returned a clear answer. No ship had dared to try again. 50 years, almost to the day, after the Origin vanished, an automated sensor station on the far edge of the Sol system detected something. It was a single ping, faint and strange, coming from deep space, far beyond Pluto's orbit, in the direction of the Veil. The station's systems flagged it as unusual and sent an alert to Earth Fleet Command. At first, the duty officer on shift that night, a young lieutenant named Priya Anand, assumed it was a glitch. Sensor stations picked up strange readings all the time: cosmic radiation, drifting debris, old signals bouncing off distant objects. She logged it, as protocol required, and moved on to other tasks. 20 minutes later, the ping came again, stronger this time. And this time, it was not just a signal. It was a shape, moving. Lieutenant Anand called for a senior officer. Within the hour, the report had climbed all the way to Fleet Admiral Rosa Cade, one of the highest-ranking officers in the entire Earth fleet. Cade had been a young ensign 50 years earlier, on the night the Origin's final transmission arrived. She remembered exactly where she had been standing when the news came. She remembered the silence in the command room, the way no one had spoken for almost a full minute. She looked at the new data on her screen, a single object, large, moving slowly toward Sol system from the direction of the Veil. Its size matched almost exactly the recorded dimensions of the Origin. Its hull design, what little the long-range sensors could make out, matched too, though something about it looked different, changed. as if the ship had been rebuilt, or had grown. Admiral Cade sat very still for a long moment. Then she gave an order that had not been given in 50 years. "Signal all stations," she said quietly. "Something is coming home." No one on Earth Fleet Command that night could quite believe what the sensors were showing them. Ships did not survive 50 years lost in deep space. Ships did not simply appear again after 5 decades of silence, especially not from a region of space that had never released anything it had swallowed. And yet the data was clear, and it was getting clearer by the hour as the object drew closer. By morning, the news had reached the highest levels of the United Nations Space Council. By midday, it had reached the public, and the reaction across Earth and its colonies was immediate and overwhelming. Old memorial services were reopened. News stations that had covered the original loss 50 years earlier dug up their old footage. People who remembered the Origin's launch, now grandparents themselves, wept in front of their televisions. The great question on everyone's mind was simple, and no one had an answer. If this really was the Origin, where had it been for 50 years? And more than that, what had it become? Fleet Admiral Cade ordered a full readiness alert across every ship stationed near Sol system. She did not know if what was approaching was truly the lost ship, or a core trick, or something else entirely, wearing the Origin's shape as a disguise. Caution demanded she prepare for the worst. But as she watched the tracking data update on the main screen of Fleet Command, showing that slow, steady approach toward home, some small part of her, the part that still remembered being a young ensign 50 years ago, allowed herself to hope. Whatever it was coming. And in 3 days, it would reach Earth. 3 days felt like 3 years to the people of Earth. Fleet Admiral Rosa Cade did not sleep much during that time. She stayed at Fleet Command, watching the tracking data update hour by hour as the unknown ship moved closer. The object kept its slow, steady speed, never changing course, never trying to hide. It moved the way a tired traveler walks home after a long journey, without hurry, but without stopping either. Every scientist and analyst Earth had was studying the incoming readings. The ship's outer shape matched the old records of the Origin closely enough to raise everyone's hopes, but there were differences too. Differences that worried the engineers more than they excited them. The hull, once smooth metal, now showed strange patterns across its surface, like veins running under skin. Sections of the ship that used to be simple and functional now looked grown, almost organic, as if something had reshaped the metal from the inside. The old engines were gone, replaced by something the sensors could not identify at all. Whatever pushed this ship through space, it left no exhaust, no drive signature that matched any known technology, human or alien. "It doesn't make sense," said Dr. Amara Osei, the lead engineer studying the readings. She had spent 15 years studying the wreckage patterns of ships lost in dangerous regions of space, and she had never seen anything like this. Ships don't come back changed. They come back broken, or they don't come back at all. This thing looks like it evolved. Admiral Cade did not have an answer for her. She simply kept watching the screen. On the second day, Earth Fleet sent the first message. It was short and formal, following standard first contact protocol, in case the ship was not what it seemed to be. "Unidentified vessel, this is Earth Fleet Command. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." There was no response for 6 hours. Then, finally, a signal came back. It was not words. It was a simple burst of code, old and outdated, the kind of identification signal that human ships had used 50 years earlier, before newer systems replaced it. When the code was decrypted, it matched exactly one thing in Earth's records. UES Origin, registration confirmed. The room at Fleet Command went completely silent. Admiral Cade read the message 3 times before she spoke. "Confirm again," she said. "Run it twice more. I want to be certain before this goes any further." The technicians ran the check again, and again. Each time the result was the same. The old identification code was authentic. It was not a copy, not a core trick using stolen data, not a corrupted signal. According to every system Earth had, the ship approaching Sol was truly the Origin, lost 50 years ago, presumed destroyed, now returning home. But the ship sent no further messages after that single line of code. No voice, no explanation, no greeting, just silence. as it continued its slow approach. By the third day, the ship had entered the outer edge of the Sol system. Every telescope, every sensor station, every warship stationed nearby turned to watch it. On Earth, in the colonies, across every human world, people gathered around screens to see the live images as they came in. It was the biggest event in 50 years. Bars and public squares filled with strangers standing together, staring up at broadcast screens, waiting. The ship that appeared on those screens did not look like anyone remembered. The old Origin had been a proud but simple design, a long central body with two wide wings holding its engines, painted in the clean white and blue of the United Earth Fleet, built for exploration rather than war. What approached Sol system now was larger, its hull marked with those strange vein-like patterns Dr. OCA had noticed earlier, patterns that seemed to pulse faintly with a soft light, like something breathing. Some of the ship's old sections were untouched, still recognizable, still carrying faded remnants of the old white and blue paint. But other sections looked reshaped entirely, grown outward in smooth curves that no human shipyard had ever designed. It was both the ship people remembered, and something else layered on top of it, as if 50 years in the veil had not destroyed the Origin, but had changed it into something new. Admiral Cade gave the order to send an escort of 6 warships to meet it, not as an attack, but as an honor guard, and as a precaution. She herself boarded the flagship, the Resolute, to be present when contact was finally made. She wanted to see this with her own eyes. As the Resolute and its escort approached, the Origin finally responded again, this time with a voice. It was calm, clear, and unmistakably human, though something about the rhythm of the speech felt slightly unfamiliar, as if the speaker had spent a long time away from ordinary conversation, and was only now remembering how it worked. "This is Captain Elena Voss, commanding the UES Origin. We are returning to Earth. We request permission to approach and dock at Fleet Command." The bridge of the Resolute fell into stunned silence for the second time in 3 days. Elena Voss had been 38 years old when the Origin disappeared. If she was truly still alive, she would now be 88. But the voice on the recording did not sound like an 88-year-old woman. It sounded almost exactly as it had 50 years ago, on the day of the ship's final transmission, before it vanished into the veil. Admiral Cade leaned forward. "Captain Voss," she said carefully, "this is Fleet Admiral Rosa Cade. I served as a junior officer the night we lost contact with the Origin. I need to ask you directly, is this truly you, and is your crew safe?" There was a pause before the answer came. "It is truly me, Admiral. My crew is safe. We have much to explain, and we understand your caution. We do not ask you to simply trust a voice on a radio. We only ask for the chance to show you the truth, in person." Cade looked around the bridge at the faces of her officers. Every one of them was watching her, waiting for her decision. Protocol said she should be cautious, should demand more proof, should perhaps even quarantine the ship and question its crew from a distance before allowing it anywhere near Earth. But something about the calm certainty in that voice, something about the small details only Elena Voss herself would know, that the ship had already provided when questioned, told Cade that this was not a trick. "Permission granted," she said finally. "Follow standard docking procedure. Full medical and security teams will meet you. Welcome home, Captain Voss." The Origin docked at Fleet Command Station 3 hours later, sliding into the docking bay with a smoothness that surprised the engineers watching, as if the ship's new systems handled the maneuver with more precision than the old ones ever had. A full team waited at the airlock: doctors, security officers, engineers, and Admiral Cade herself, standing at the front, her hands folded behind her back to hide how they trembled. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss. The first person to step through was not Elena Voss. It was a young man, perhaps 25 years old, dressed in a uniform that resembled the old Earth Fleet designs but was clearly altered, made of some smooth, dark material no one recognized. His eyes swept the room calmly, taking in every detail, every face, every weapon, quietly held ready by the security team. He did not seem afraid. He did not seem surprised either, as if he had expected exactly this kind of reception. "My name is Cale Voss," he said, "son of Captain Elena Voss. I ask that your teams stand down their weapons. We mean no harm to Earth. We never have. The room stirred with confusion. Elena Voss had been unmarried and childless when the Origin left Earth 50 years ago. There was no record of a son. Admiral Cade stepped forward. Captain Voss did not have a child before this mission, she said carefully. Can you explain that? Cale's expression did not change. I was born aboard this ship, in the 3rd year after we entered the Veil. My mother will explain everything, Admiral. I only ask for patience. A moment later, Elena Voss herself stepped through the airlock. She looked exactly as she had 50 years ago, not older by even a single visible year. Her hair was the same dark brown, her face unlined, her posture as straight and confident as the statue built in her honor at the Fleet Academy. Several people in the room gasped audibly. One of the younger officers, who had grown up seeing that same statue every day during training, actually took a step back in shock. Admiral Cade, Elena said, her voice steady. It has been a long time. Longer for you than for us, it seems. Cade found she could not speak for a moment. This was the woman from the recordings, from the memorial speeches, from the old photographs shown in every history class about the loss of the Origin. And yet she stood here now, unaged, calm, alive. Captain Voss, Cade finally managed. On behalf of Earth, welcome home. We have many questions. I know, Elena said, and we will answer all of them. But first, I ask that you look behind me. She stepped aside. Through the airlock, more of the Origin's crew began to emerge, one by one. Some looked like ordinary humans, though something in their eyes seemed different, sharper, older than their faces suggested. Others looked less ordinary. Their skin carried faint traces of those same vein-like patterns visible on the ship's hull, glowing very faintly under the station's lights. A few moved with a grace and precision that no untrained human body should have possessed. Behind them all, last to emerge, walked a figure that made the entire room go still. It was tall, humanoid in shape, but clearly not human, its skin like polished dark stone, its eyes glowing a soft golden light, its movements slow and deliberate. It wore no uniform, no clothing at all, only patterns across its body that matched the ones on the Origin's hull exactly. Admiral Cade's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm before she stopped herself. Do not be afraid, Elena Voss said quickly. This is Arin. It has traveled with us for many years. It is not our enemy. In fact, without it, none of us would be standing here today. Cade stared at the strange being, then back at Elena Voss, then at the assembled crew behind her. Some human, some no longer quite human. All of them alive when the entire galaxy had believed them dead for 50 years. Captain, Cade said slowly, I think you had better tell us everything, from the beginning. Elena Voss nodded, and for the first time since stepping off the ship, something like sadness crossed her face. It began the night the Corps attacked us, she said. The night we fled into the Veil. We thought it would be our death. Instead, it was only the beginning. Elena Voss was given a private room aboard Fleet Command Station to tell her story. Admiral Cade sat across from her, along with 2 senior officers and a recorder, to keep an official record. Cale stood quietly behind his mother's chair. The strange being called Aaron waited outside, at Elena's request, so as not to frighten the humans listening. When we entered the Veil, Elena began, our systems failed almost immediately. Every instrument on the ship went dark. We could not see stars. We could not see the Corps ships behind us. We could not even see each other clearly. The air itself seemed to bend the light. I gave the order to hold position and wait, because moving blind seemed more dangerous than staying still. How long did that last? Cade asked. 6 days by our internal clocks, Elena said, though we now believe time moved differently inside the Veil than it does outside. On the 7th day, our systems came back online, all at once, and we were no longer alone. She explained that the Origin had drifted, powerless, into the center of the Veil, and there they found something no human had ever seen before, a structure so large that at first the crew mistook it for a small moon. It was not natural. It was built, though by whom, no one could say. Its surface was covered in the same strange patterns now visible on the Origin's hull, patterns that pulsed with faint light, like a heartbeat. We call it the cradle, Elena said. We still do not know its true name, or if it ever had one. It was old, Admiral. Older than anything I can properly describe. Some of us believe it predates the core empire. Some believe it predates every spacefaring species we know of. Tobias Lynn, the ship's chief engineer, had been the first to suggest sending a small team to investigate. Against the objections of several officers, Elena had agreed. She led the team herself, along with Lynn and 4 others. What they found inside the cradle changed the course of their lives forever. The structure was mostly empty, its halls vast and silent, lit only by that same faint pulsing glow. At the very center, they found a single chamber, and within it, something that was not quite alive and not quite dead. A vast intelligence, ancient beyond measure, slowly dying after countless thousands of years of solitude. It called itself, in the closest translation the crew could manage, the Warden. It had been guarding something, Elena explained. A memory, a warning, left behind by whoever built the cradle. A record of an enemy so terrible that its creators built this place specifically to warn future travelers who might stumble upon it, the way we did. The Warden had waited a very long time for someone to arrive. It was old and weak, and it was afraid its warning would die with it before anyone came to hear it. Admiral Cade leaned forward. What enemy? Elena's expression darkened. The Warden called it the Withering. A force, or a species, or perhaps something else entirely. Even the Warden was not fully certain what to call it. It does not conquer worlds the way the core do, through war and fear. It consumes them. Whole civilizations, entire star systems, reduced to nothing over time, as if something enormous were slowly draining the life out of the galaxy itself. The cradle's builders fought against it long ago, and lost almost everything. The Warden was the last piece of them left, built to survive and to wait, and to warn. And it warned you, Cade said quietly. It warned us, because we were the ones who found it, Elena said. But it did more than warn us. It was dying, Admiral, and it did not want its knowledge to die with it, so it offered us a choice. It could share what remained of its power and its understanding with us, changing us in ways it could not fully explain, in exchange for carrying its warning forward. Or we could leave, as we had come, and let its knowledge disappear forever. The room was silent for a long moment. You said yes, Cade said finally. I said yes, Elena confirmed. I will not pretend it was an easy decision, or that I made it without fear. But I looked at my crew, all of them trapped in a place none of us understood, with a core patrol waiting outside that would kill us the moment we reappeared, and I thought, what do we have to lose that has not already been taken from us? So I agreed, and the Warden began the process. She explained, as best she could, what happened next. The process was not fast. It took years, the same years that to the outside galaxy appeared to pass as mere days, thanks to the strange way time moved differently inside the veil compared to outside it. Slowly, the Warden's failing systems reshaped the origin itself, merging ancient technology with human engineering, growing new systems into the ship's structure the way a tree grows new branches. And slowly, it reshaped the crew as well. Not by force, but by a kind of careful, patient change, altering their bodies at the smallest levels to be stronger, longer-lived, more resilient, better suited to carry forward what the Warden needed them to carry. Some of the crew changed more than others, Elena said. Some barely changed at all, and remain almost exactly as they were the day we left Earth, only slower to age now, and stronger than before. Others changed more deeply. You saw some of them when we arrived. They do not resent what happened to them. If anything, most of us have come to see it as a gift, though a strange and heavy one. And your son? Cade asked, glancing at Cale, who still stood silently behind his mother's chair. Cale was born aboard the cradle, in the 3rd year, Elena said, a small, tired smile crossing her face for the first time. He has never set foot on Earth. He has only heard about it in stories. He carries more of the Warden's changes in him than most of us, since he grew from the very beginning surrounded by it. But he is my son, Admiral, in every way that matters. I would ask that he be treated with the same respect as any other crew member, and the same suspicion too, if that is what your protocols require. I only ask that suspicion be fair. Cade nodded slowly. absorbing everything she had heard. And the being that arrived with you, Arn. Arn is what remains of the Warden, Elena said. Near the end, as its old systems finally began to fail completely, it transferred what was left of itself into a body the Cradle's ancient facilities could still construct. One final function, it still had the power to perform. It is not human, and it is not entirely the ancient intelligence it once was either. Something new, made from the last pieces of something very old. It chose to come with us, rather than remain behind and fade away with no one left to carry its warning. Admiral Cade sat back in her chair, trying to take in the scope of what she had just been told. 50 years of assumed loss, an ancient dying structure hidden inside impossible space, a warning about a galaxy-consuming threat older than any known civilization, a crew transformed, a ship rebuilt, a child born far from any human world, and an ancient alien intelligence wearing a new body, all arriving together on the same day, 50 years almost to the hour since the origin had vanished. Why now? She asked finally. You could have stayed hidden, safe inside the veil. Why come back at all, knowing how this might be received? Elena's face grew serious. Because the Warden's dying warning was not just history, Admiral. It was also a prediction. Based on patterns the Warden had tracked for thousands of years, patterns of dying stars and vanished civilizations, it believed the withering was stirring again, somewhere beyond known space, and that it would eventually move toward populated regions again, the way it always eventually does. We do not know exactly when. We do not know exactly where it will strike first, but we could not sit safely inside the veil, protected by its strange properties, while the rest of the galaxy remained unwarned. Earth is our home, whatever we have become. We came back to warn you, and to help prepare, however we can. Admiral Cade was quiet for a long moment, staring at the woman across from her, a woman she had once mourned as dead, who now sat calmly describing threats that made even the fearsome core empire seem small by comparison. This is going to be difficult for a great many people to accept, Cade said finally. I know, Elena said. That is why we came to Earth first, and not to the wider Galactic Council. We wanted our own people to understand, before anyone else. We wanted you to have time to decide how, and whether, to share this further. Cade nodded slowly. Outside the small room she knew, news of the Origin's return was already spreading across every human world, and likely beyond. It would not stay a private matter for long. Other species would want answers. The core empire, upon learning that the ship it had once destroyed had returned carrying advanced, unknown technology, would almost certainly want answers too, or worse, want the technology for themselves. Captain Voss, Cade said, I believe you. And I believe we owe you and your crew our full support in whatever comes next. But I must warn you, word of this will not stay contained, and there are those in this galaxy who will see what your crew carries, not as a warning to be heeded, but as a prize to be seized. Elena's eyes hardened slightly. We are aware of that possibility, Admiral, and we did not come back unprepared for it. Behind her, Cale's expression, calm until now, sharpened into something colder. Something that reminded Cade uncomfortably of a soldier, readying for a fight he had long expected. Let them come, he said quietly. We are not the same crew that fled the core 50 years ago. We do not intend to run this time. Word of the Origin's return spread across the galaxy faster than anyone at Fleet Command expected. Within a week, every major species with a presence near human space knew that the ship the core empire had once destroyed had come home. 50 years later, carrying technology no one recognized. The story traveled through trade routes, through diplomatic channels, through the kind of quiet gossip that moved between star systems no matter how carefully governments tried to control information. The Velkari, Earth's oldest allies, sent a formal message of celebration, along with a request to study the Origin's new systems, framed politely as scientific curiosity between friends. Several smaller species, ones who had suffered under core expansion much as Earth once feared it might, sent quieter messages, less about celebration and more about hope. Hope that perhaps this changed. Returning ship meant humanity had found a way to stand up to the core empire at last. The core empire's response took longer to arrive, and when it did, it was neither warm nor threatening on the surface. A formal message came from Corps High Command, offering polite congratulations on the safe return of the Origin's crew, along with a request, worded carefully, but unmistakably a demand underneath the diplomatic language, for full access to examine the ship's new technology, in the name of Galactic Safety Standards. Admiral Cade brought the message to Elena Voss personally. "They want to inspect your ship," Cade said, "officially, to verify it meets safety regulations before it is permitted to operate freely in shared space. Unofficially, everyone in this building understands exactly what they are really asking for." Elena read the message twice, her expression unreadable. "They attacked us once, and called it a lesson about our place in the galaxy," she said quietly. "Now they want to learn from what came out of that lesson. I imagine Commander Koss is still serving, somewhere in their fleet." "He was promoted according to our records," Cade said. "He commands a larger patrol group now, closer to the border near the Veil." Something flickered across Elena's face. Not quite anger, something colder and more controlled. "Then I expect we will meet him again before long." She was right. 2 weeks after the Origin's return, Earth Fleet's outer sensor network detected a large core fleet forming near the border of human space, close to the region surrounding the Veil. Officially, the Core Empire described the fleet movement as a routine patrol exercise. Unofficially, its size and position told a different story. It was too large for a routine patrol. It was positioned exactly where a fleet would gather if it intended to intercept a specific target, namely, any ship traveling between Earth and the Veil. Admiral Cade called an emergency council with Fleet Command's senior leadership, along with Elena Voss and several of the Origin's returned crew. The mood in the room was tense. "If they cannot get the technology through diplomacy," one of the senior officers said, "they may try to take it by force. Either by attacking the Origin directly, or by finding some pretext to seize it while it sits docked here at the station. They would not dare attack a ship docked at Earth's own command station," another officer argued. "That would mean open war with humanity, and likely draw in our allies as well. The Corps are aggressive, but they are not reckless." "They were not reckless 50 years ago either," Elena said quietly, "and yet they still opened fire on an unarmed science vessel that had already offered to withdraw. I would not assume caution from Commander Koss, simply because caution would be wise." Cale, standing near the back of the room as he often did during these meetings, spoke up. "There is something else to consider. The core fleet is gathering near the Veil, not near Earth. If they wanted only to seize the Origin itself, Earth would be the obvious target. Gathering near the Veil suggests they want something more than the ship. They may believe the cradle itself still exists there, and that it still holds power worth taking." The room fell silent at that thought. If the Core Empire believed there was more ancient technology waiting inside the Veil, technology it could seize and control entirely for itself, the danger extended far beyond the Origin and its crew. It became a threat to the balance of power across the entire region of space. "Does the cradle still exist?" Admiral Cade asked, turning to Elena. "The warden was dying when we left," Elena said. "Its systems were failing. I do not know what remains of the cradle now, if anything. But even a dead structure, built with technology that old, might hold enough secrets to be worth a war, in the eyes of an empire like the Core." Cale stepped forward. "Then we cannot allow them to reach it. Whatever remains there, the warden trusted us with its warning, specifically because it did not trust empires built on conquest to use such power wisely. If the Core take control of the cradle, whatever they find there, they will not use it to prepare the galaxy for the withering. They will use it to expand their own reach, exactly the kind of behavior the warden's builders were trying to guard against in the first place." Admiral Cade weighed the situation carefully. Earth Fleet, even after 50 years of growth, was still smaller than the Core Empire's forces. A direct confrontation, fleet against fleet, was not a fight Earth could expect to win easily, especially not near Core-controlled territory close to the Veil. "We do not have the strength to challenge them directly in that region," Cade admitted. "Not alone." "Then we do not need to challenge them directly," Elena said. "The Origin is no longer the ship it once was, Admiral, nor is its crew the crew it once was. We have spent 50 years, by our own reckoning, learning what the Cradle's technology can do. We do not need Earth's entire fleet to defend the Veil." We only need enough of a force to give the core fleet a reason to hesitate, while the Origin itself does what it needs to do. Cade studied her carefully. What exactly are you proposing, Captain? Let us go, Elena said simply. Send the Origin, and whatever escort ships you can reasonably spare, toward the Veil. If the core fleet intends to reach the cradle, we intend to reach it first, and either destroy what remains of it beyond their recovery, or secure it in a way that keeps it out of their hands permanently. We did not carry the Warden's warning 50 years across space, just to watch its final legacy fall into the hands of the very kind of empire it feared most. It was a bold plan, and a dangerous one, sending the Origin back toward the region where it had first vanished, directly into a confrontation with a core fleet gathering for what looked increasingly like conflict, carried enormous risk. But Admiral Cade also understood that allowing the core empire to seize ancient, unknown technology unchallenged carried risks of its own, risks that could shift the balance of power across the entire region for generations. After a long silence, she nodded. I can spare 4 cruisers as escort. I cannot risk more without weakening Earth's own defenses, in case this turns into something larger. The rest will be up to you and your crew, Captain Voss. That will be enough, Elena said, and for the first time since her return, something like the old confidence Admiral Cade remembered from 50 years ago returned fully to her voice. We did not survive the Veil, and everything that came after, only to lose what we carried home now. The Earth Fleet Task Force departed 3 days later. The Origin, its strange grown hull gleaming faintly under the light of Sol's distant sun, flanked by 4 Earth Fleet cruisers, heading back toward the region of space it had once fled 50 years ago under core fire. Aboard the Origin, Cale stood at the ship's command station beside his mother, watching the stars shift on the display as they moved further from Earth. Are you afraid? He asked quietly, in a rare moment of stillness before the long journey ahead. Elena considered the question honestly. A little, she admitted. The last time I flew toward that region of space, I lost everything I thought I understood about the galaxy, and gained something I never expected in return. I do not know what waits for us this time either. But we are not running this time, Cale said. No, Elena agreed, her eyes fixed steadily on the stars ahead. This time, we are the ones who decide what happens next. Behind them, standing quietly near the ship's core systems, Arn's golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of the bridge, watching the same stars with an unreadable patience that came from having already lived through the rise and fall of civilizations far older than the one now sailing bravely toward an uncertain confrontation. Far ahead, near the swirling edge of the Veil, Commander Threll Koss stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his own sensors report the approach of a small human task force. A slow, cold smile crossed his face. 50 years ago, he had believed he taught a young species a lesson about its place in the galaxy. Now, it seemed, that same species was returning to test that lesson again. Prepare all ships, he ordered. It appears the humans have not learned their place after all. Let us remind them, once and for all. The Veil looked exactly as Elena Voss remembered it. A slow, swirling cloud of dust and strange light, stretching across a vast region of space like a wound that had never fully healed. 50 years ago, she had fled into it as a desperate act of survival, not knowing if she would ever see open stars again. Now she approached it as a commander returning to defend what she had found inside it. The core fleet was waiting at its edge, exactly where the sensors had predicted. Commander Threll Koss had gathered 12 warships, far more than the 4 cruisers escorting the Origin. From a purely numerical standpoint, the battle that was about to happen should not have been close. Admiral Cade's voice came through on a secure channel from Earth, monitoring the situation from a great distance, unable to send further help in time even if the situation demanded it. Captain Voss, Core Fleet has not yet opened communications. Their formation suggests they intend to block your path rather than negotiate. Proceed with caution. Understood, Admiral, Elena replied calmly. We did not come here expecting a conversation. The Origin led its small formation toward the edge of the Veil. The 4 Earth Fleet cruisers spread in a defensive pattern around it. As they drew closer, Commander Koss's flagship finally opened a channel, his cold, proud voice filling the Origin's bridge. Human vessel, you are ordered to halt and prepare for boarding. Your technology has been deemed a risk to regional stability and will be confiscated for inspection. Elena stepped forward to respond herself. Commander Koss, it has been 50 years. I see you still believe threats and force are the only language worth speaking. There was a brief pause on the other end, as if her voice, and the fact that she recognized him by name after 5 decades, had genuinely surprised him. Captain Voss, he said slowly, I admit, I did not expect you to still be alive to hear my reputation. A great many things about us are different than you expect, Elena said. I will not surrender this ship, Commander, and I will not allow your fleet to reach the structure hidden within the veil. What lies there was never meant to become another weapon in an empire's arsenal. Koss's tone hardened. Then you leave us no choice. The core fleet advanced. What followed was unlike any battle Earth fleet had fought before. The 4 Earth cruisers, though outnumbered 3-1, fought with the discipline and stubbornness that had become humanity's quiet reputation across the galaxy over the past 50 years, weaving through core fire, refusing to break formation, even as damage mounted. But it was the origin itself that truly changed the shape of the battle. Where the old origin had once been a simple, unarmed science vessel, the ship that now moved through the battle was something else entirely. Its grown, vein-like hull absorbed weapons fire in ways that baffled core targeting systems, spreading the force of each impact harmlessly across its surface, instead of allowing it to concentrate and breach the hull. When it returned fire, it did so with weapons built from technology no core scanner could properly identify. Precise beams of energy that disabled engines and weapons systems without the wasteful destruction of a full kill, as if the ship's new systems had been designed by something that valued precision and restraint over brute force. Aboard the Origins bridge, Kale moved between control stations with the calm efficiency of someone who had trained for exactly this moment his entire life, even though he had never set foot on Earth or fought in a single previous battle. The changes the warden had given him, the ones that had grown deeper in him than in any other member of the crew, allowed him to process the chaos of battle in ways that seemed almost inhumanly fast to the officers watching him work. Their eastern flank is weakening, he reported to his mother. If we push the cruisers there now, we can break their formation entirely. Elena gave the order without hesitation, and the Earth cruisers, guided by real-time data the Origin fed directly into their targeting systems, struck exactly where Kale predicted. 2 core warships, caught in a crossfire they had not anticipated, were forced to withdraw, their weapons systems disabled beyond immediate repair. Commander Koss watched from his own bridge with growing disbelief, as ship after ship in his superior fleet found itself outmaneuvered and outfought by a force less than a third its size. This was not the desperate fleeing science vessel he remembered destroying 50 years ago. This was something that fought like it had already survived far worse than anything his fleet could throw at it. Concentrate all fire on the Origin itself, he ordered, his voice tight with a frustration he had not expected to feel. Ignore the escorts. If we cripple the flagship, the rest of this fiction falls apart. The remaining core ships turned their full attention toward the Origin, and for a tense, dangerous stretch of the battle, it seemed as though sheer concentrated firepower might finally overwhelm even the ship's strange new defenses. Alarms blared across the bridge as shields buckled under the strain. Elena gripped the edge of her command station as the ship shuddered under repeated impacts. It was Aaron who finally acted. Until that point, the strange being had remained quietly near the ship's core systems, watching the battle unfold without interference. Now, as the Origin's defenses neared their breaking point, Arn moved to a section of the ship the crew rarely accessed, a chamber deep within the vessel that still held the last true remnants of the Warden's original power. Golden light spread from its hands as it touched the chamber's surface, and throughout the ship, the pulsing veins along the hull flared brighter than they ever had before. The Origin's shields did not merely hold, they surged, pushing back against the concentrated core fire with a force that sent a visible shockwave rippling outward through space, catching the nearest core ships and sending them tumbling off course, their own systems overwhelmed by the sudden release of ancient energy. On the bridge, Elena felt the ship's systems respond around her, stronger and steadier than a moment before. She looked toward the corridor where Aaron had gone, understanding without words what had just happened. "Commander Koss," she said, opening a channel once more. her voice carrying clearly across the battlefield. "This is your last opportunity to withdraw with what remains of your fleet. What we carry is not a weapon meant for conquest. It was never meant for you. Stand down, and this ends now, with no further losses on either side." For a long moment, there was no response. Then, finally, Cass's voice returned, quieter now, stripped of its earlier confidence. "You have changed, Captain Voss. More than I believed possible for your kind." 50 years changes many things, Commander," Elena replied, "including, I hope, the wisdom to recognize when a fight is no longer worth its cost." Whether it was wisdom or simply the undeniable evidence of a battle turning irreversibly against him, Cass gave the order to withdraw. The remaining core ships broke formation and retreated back across the border, leaving the battered but victorious Earth Task Force in control of the space surrounding the Veil. In the aftermath, Elena ordered a final, careful expedition into the Veil itself to check on what remained of the cradle. What they found confirmed what she had feared. The great structure had continued to fail in the years since the Origin's departure, its systems finally reaching the end of their long, ancient life. Arn, standing quietly before the dark, silent halls that had once housed a vast, dying intelligence, confirmed that nothing meaningful remained to be seized by anyone, friend or enemy. Whatever power the cradle once held had passed fully into the Origin, its crew, and the being that now walked among them. The core empire, having lost both the battle and the prize it sought, made no further attempts to claim the technology by force, at least for the time being, choosing instead to save face through official statements downplaying the entire encounter. But word of the battle spread nonetheless, carried by every species watching the balance of galactic power shift, even slightly, for the first time in generations. A young species, once dismissed and nearly destroyed for wandering into the wrong region of space, had returned from what should have been its grave, and had stood its ground against one of the galaxy's most feared empires, and won. When the Origin finally returned to Earth for the second time, the welcome it received was even greater than the first. Admiral Cade stood once more at the docking bay, watching Elena Voss step through the airlock, tired, but unmistakably proud, her crew and her strange new allies close behind her. "You did it," Cade said simply. "We did what needed to be done," Elena replied. "But this is only the beginning, Admiral. The Warden's warning about the withering remains. Somewhere out there, it is still stirring, still waiting. We have bought time, not victory." Cade nodded, understanding the weight of what lay ahead. "Then we had better start preparing," she said. "And this time, humanity will not face it unprepared, or alone." Behind them, Cale stood at the edge of the docking bay, looking out through a viewport at the distant stars beyond Earth, stars he had only ever heard about in stories until this journey home. For the first time since his birth aboard a ship lost in impossible space, he allowed himself a small, quiet smile. 50 years ago, the galaxy had believed the Origin destroyed, its crew lost to a void that swallowed everything, and returned nothing. They had been wrong. It had not been destroyed. It had been changed, tested, and reborn, carrying home not just a warning, but proof that even the smallest, youngest species in the galaxy could survive the worst the void had to offer, and come back stronger for it. Somewhere far beyond the edges of known space, something ancient and terrible continued to stir, unaware that a small, stubborn species called humanity was, for the first time, ready to stand and face it.